All right, so welcome to the first masterclass, first webinar by Productized. Today, we'll be talking about strategies and key elements in product feature prioritization with David Pereira, that we have the pleasure to be having with us at the Productized conference in Lisbon this year, and an amazing lineup that we have been preparing for our attendees, and we're super glad that David has been able to join us in this, I would say, quite exclusive series of webinars, because this is a series of 6 webinars that we have prepared on specific product topics that we know that the productized community is always fun to learn about. It's always very eager to learn. And we have also an amazing audience today. We are counting, so we have dozens of people registered. So let's see how many actually join us. But so far we have large, almost 30 people joined us so far. So we're going to start the session now. And let me welcome you. My name is Marty. I'm founder and CEO of Productized. And tell you the story of Productized. So we have created the conference actually 10 years ago, and back in 2015, when we organized the first edition of the Productized conference. Some of these people are very much still with us. Others have moved on to create quite successful startups like Sensei. Others have tried other projects. Others are still in the product management space. And, you know, back then we thought it was time to speak about productization. It was time to speak about the struggles of building products, the struggles of creating great products. What makes a great product? What are the difficulties and the challenges? So Productized was born, and it was born at the offices of Sensei back then, and by very passionate people. In every conference since 2015, we've been inviting some of the most accomplished authors like David Pereira, also many others that have passed through the conference, like Arnold Kittler that we see here in the picture, or Roman, or Brady Kadat, or Melissa Perry, Teresa Torres, some of the iconic thought leaders in this space that have been with us in the last 10 years. We have a YouTube channel where also this session will be uploaded at the end. So if for some reason you cannot join us today, or you have to leave earlier, do not fear. The entire session is being recorded and will be uploaded, so the content can be retrieved in our YouTube channel, which by now has hundreds and hundreds of videos and talks from the last 10 years. Just a quick glimpse of Productized numbers: over 4,000 IRL participants, so real people that have joined our events in person, over 1,000 hours of product training. Pretty much all the globe has been covered by us. Far side places from Australia to Indonesia to United States, and of course Europe. Over 100 workshops and over 100 webinars like this, and thousands of people in the product community that share this bond of making products and learning more about what makes leading companies join the event also in October. So what's in it for this year? This is the 10th edition of the Productized conference, so mark the calendars. We're starting on October 15th with the Leaders Day, and then we have the workshops on the 16th and the main conference on the 17th. The main theme of the conference is how to create change together, and the venue is the Field Meeting Center in the city center of the new business district of Lisbon. And so we're going to have 500 people capacity, a number of hands-on workshops, state-of-the-art venue. And those workshops are really hands-on workshops, as much as you can possibly have. And David Pereira was actually one of the workshop trainers in the past, and it's going to be a speaker this year with an inspiring talk that you'll get a little glimpse of the gist of it today. So most of the value that you get from this event is also the networking and the fact that you get to meet hundreds of product people like you, along with great coffee from professional baristas, generous breaks, and amazing people, great vibe, an after party at the end for everyone to, chill and get to know each other a little bit better. The tickets are on sale. We have early bird discount, the tickets until the end of June. And those are really the best price you can get at the moment. I really suggest that you check out our website. And if you're buying those tickets as a company, you'll get a further discount. So you can get 2-day all access ticket at a 20% discount for 452 euros plus VAT instead of the nominal price of 565. I would also like to thank our main sponsor, Next by Cofidis. They have been, very, 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 very active by helping us make this event happen this year. Actually, since 2023, when we restarted the IRL version, Cofidis trusted in the project, and I'm really glad and thankful that I have been with us and also going to be at the conference with the booth. So just to remind you that we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the session. So make sure that you have all your hard questions prepared for the field. And with no further ado, I would like to call on stage David Pereira, the virtual stage that we have here. David, please welcome and feel free to share any slides that you might have with the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Hi, everyone. How are you doing today? Still have some energy to talk about product? That's good. That's good. So today we have a very interesting topic. And I want you just to reflect a little bit on your journey. Probably you have had situations where nobody knew what mattered most. And you had to discuss, and you end up in meetings that resulted in more meetings, and that drained the energy. Or have been in situations that were something like this. You know what you're working this week, and it's the most important thing. And then the next week, it's not important anymore. I have something else. Then you start something. And then you end in a situation that you have multiple things going on in parallel and nothing gets done. And today we are here to talk about this. And it's very important to have this conversation grounded on strategy, because we cannot talk about prioritization without strategy. And I say that sometimes there's a relationship kind of love and hate. If we have a very good strategy, prioritization becomes a piece of cake. But if this strategy is absent or confusing, then it will be very hard for us to agree on that. So when it comes to strategy, what is this thing here? Strategy will be something that simplifies decision making. There's a place we want to be. That is our vision. No matter how that is, strategy is what will enable us to get close to the vision. Whatever is presented to us, we can say, yes, that's good, let's do it. Or no, that's bad, we shall not do that. So we need to understand good strategy, bad strategy, elements of that, so we can talk more about prioritization. Because it would be unfair from my side to talk about prioritization without looking at strategy, because you need to recognize the elements you have in your situation so you can adapt them. So when we look at product strategy, well, as I mentioned, it is all about simplifying decision making. And you need to have a few elements. And I tell you one thing. What is the purpose and the context? That's the why. And how you present your strategy is of less relevance. You need to have something, which sometimes can be a bullet point list that can help you already. Or you may choose to have a lean canvas, for example. Great. You need to have a representation that you stay behind that and you use in your day-to-day. And that will answer the why and also who your audience is. But not only who your audience is, but who your audience isn't. Because you do need to know who you are ignoring. Because if you don't know that, you're going to talk about potential audience all the time, and that gets confusing. And then what game are you playing? For example, if your product is a new product, or you're developing something inside a product that's new, you will benefit from a go-to-market strategy. But if you have a product that is successful already, what you need is something a bit different. You need a growth strategy. So recognize the game you're playing, and then you can align on how you get there. And the strategy is time-bounded. If you think that you're going to set a strategy and forget about it, that's not how it works. What worked yesterday may not work today. And we need to understand when today is so you can adapt your strategy when the moment comes. So that is one of the key aspects. When you have a good strategy, making decision will be easy for a team. And if you have a poor one, what happens? You realize that you fall prey to analysis paralysis. You have many meetings to talk about what to do next. It is a kind of consensus-driven decision-making, or sometimes even worse, there's a hippo, the highest paid person opinion that is going to decide what you should do next. So let's understand here what is not a product strategy so you remove some confusion from the table. It's not going to be a plan that you follow that blindly without challenging. It should be you can start with a plan, but you should tweak that as you learn. And a strategy I mentioned is of less relevance on how you present it. So if you create something and you put on a picture, hang on the wall, and you don't dare to change, that's wrong. Strategy will change based on your learnings, and that's normal. And another thing is about on the complexity. The more information you add there, the harder it will be for people to understand. So you need to invest time on simplifying. And some people get the concept of simplicity incorrectly. Simplicity doesn't mean like reckless. It means that you have thought a lot about something, that you came to the few words that truly matter. And that would be your strategy. It's simple to understand and simple to use on the day-to-day. And no strategy can guarantee desired goals. It may pave you the way, set the constraints on how you play the game to get closer to the goals. But there is no recipe for success. Sometimes the way the strategy plays out, it becomes just a project management disguise. You don't want to have, for example, as part of your strategy, a roadmap that will have everything you have to do until the end of next year. That is not a strategy. That is a project management thing that you are betting very high on features. So you need to have something more solid, knowing the game you want to play. So let's look at some examples here. When you have a good strategy, it's clear for you what matters. So you know what matters, you know what doesn't matter. So you can focus on where you should put your attention. One of the strategies I like the most is from 37 Signals. And I like looking at Basecamp because the guys are very smart on making things simple. And their founder, Jason Fried, he likes saying that it's simple until we complicate it. So some facts here. When you look at Basecamp, they have more than 100,000 paying users and more than 10 million profit. And it's quite interesting that they have just about 70 employees as of 2023. I don't know as of now, but can you imagine just this number of employees? They have this number of profit. Here, I'm not talking about revenue. I'm talking about profit. And which is a strategy they use to play this game? The very first thing, it is the focus. They underdo their competitors. They are not going to offer more features than their competitors. They are going to offer a set of features that help users get the job done, but it's reduced. It's simple. They don't offer more than their competitors. Actually, they offer less.
David, are we still on the same slide, or have you moved the slides? Because the slide that we see is the thin line of love and hate. Not sure if this is the
Wow,
one you want to show.
that's quite interesting because I have been moving slides for a while now. That's good that
Okay.
you mentioned. I
Okay. Yeah.
think there's
Actually,
something that happened with Keynote.
Bruno mentioned is like it's a great bug detector. So thank you,
Oh,
Bruno.
such a
For
pity.
okay. Now we see the right slide. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for mentioning. Oh, you missed some slides here, guys. Sorry for that. Okay, so when we look at 37 signals, one of the aspects they have, it is about letting customers outgrow them because they focus on a small to medium-sized business. Let's say that some customers will grow and they need something more customized. They're not going to do it. 37 signals, Basecamp, they will say, no, go for another product. That's not us. We don't offer that. So even a big account will not define how their product will be set up. They will have to let it go. Another aspect is the differentiation. They have everything in one solution: communication, handling issues, everything is in one place for projects, but they focus on smaller teams, not the big ones. And their audience is very clearly defined. If the team becomes that big, it's not for them. And they will encourage the team either to use the tool or to go to another provider. And they clearly say that they don't serve the big organizations. And remember when I said about the audience, who you serve and who you don't serve. That's what 37 Signals does very well. So that's a good example of strategy. So I think there is a problem with the sharing here. I will try it again because it got stuck. So I notice when I look here on what you're seeing. No, I will try sharing. I will just try sharing the whole screen. Sorry for that. Because then I hope it. All right. So I hope you see the right. One of the aspects of strategy, it is like we will have to pivot. Eventually, we learn that something is not as we expected. And what we do then? What most places will do, they will keep following the same strategy and hoping for the best. And that's the moment that will hold them from growing. What is hard to recognize is that most strategies in the beginning will fail. And the question is, how long does it take for us to learn it failed? Once we learn, we can adapt. So let's talk about some strategies that don't work at all, so you can understand why that doesn't work and what you could do differently. The very first thing is like, your competitor is doing something cool and you say, that's it, let's copy it, let's do the same thing. But then you don't know exactly why they are doing and why that matters. For example, some time ago, Microsoft said, Apple is doing this thing, iPod, we should just do our version. So they tried to create Zune. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but Zune was something quite interesting. As you can see here, it launched, lasted 5 years, and then it created a massive loss of almost $300 million. You can never be a better shadow. So you cannot just copy and hope for the best. It doesn't work like that. If you go to Productized, it means you are creating something. So don't try to be a shadow. It's not going to work. And what can you do instead? Differentiation. So you want to be different than your competition. So you want to do something they're not doing. Then you're going to stand out. Who did that very well? Spotify. If you look at what Spotify did, was incredible because the music industry was already quite convoluted. There was already iTunes being quite successful and so on. But then Spotify came with a different business model, differentiation on streaming. And what happened is, if you look at the current results, more than 675 million monthly active users. That's a lot. And revenue more than 15 billion. So that's how they got there. So if you think about copying, then ask a different question. How can we differentiate? That's a better question that will lead you to more innovation. everything matters equally. So when you have a poor strategy, you try doing everything, and it's very hard for you to understand what is the most important. Let's look at one example here. I remember when I worked in Brazil, we represented Microsoft, specifically the Windows Phone. And it was hard to say what was good about it. It had many things that we could say, this is cool, but we could only use the word cool. We couldn't use the word outstanding. It had so many details, but eventually it didn't fly anymore. And that created massive loss. Microsoft invested a lot of time on this, but didn't fly because everything was equally important. And how do you differentiate in this case? The antidote is to prioritize ruthlessly, knowing what matters to you, and then you go further. Notion, for example, it is all about flexibility. It's one workspace with high flexibility. Everything can be done there. The user has control, full flexibility. And what happened? If you look at this, Notion has already more than 100 million in your revenue and 100 million plus users. That's really a massive growth. So again, if you start seeing we are treating everything the same, ask yourself, like, how can we prioritize? What matters most? Take something and go on that. So you need one thing to anchor. And then you have the other aspect. Remember what I said? Today, something is very important. And then the next week, it's another thing. So how can teams focus? That is the problem of frequent change. Maybe you have heard about Yahoo. Yahoo used to be the biggest digital company in the world. So that happened at some point. But what was it? Media company, search, technology? What were they good for? And it's interesting what happened. During the 2000, they had a valuation of more than 100 billion. 2017, they were sold for a fraction of that. Why? Because they lost touch. They tried to change everything. Yahoo, for example, went in a short space of time, 6 redesigns of the email. In 2 years, they redesigned the email 6 times because they were just trying to change everything. But if you try changing without knowing why, that doesn't fly. So how can you grow? You need to evolve consistently. What is a company that did that pretty well? Netflix. If you think about the trajectory of Netflix, it started with everything as DVD by mail, and then eventually you got to streaming content. But it didn't start like streaming. They went on something small, and then as the industry evolved, they started moving towards something else. But they had focus. And we all know how successful they are. Even in this convoluted market right now of streaming, Netflix is leading. They remain ahead of the others. And then we have this strategy of unchangeable. We need to do like this. That's how it is. And we are not going to change. We were successful. I don't know if any of you ever had something like that, but I had the BlackBerry. It was nice. It was a great thing. I had that at work. I love answering emails. But then you have this keyboard here, which is all the time the same place. And BlackBerry refused. They called iPhone a joke. They said, nah, this is not going to fly at all. Who would ever use this? Well, look at what happened. They had a massive decline. Can you imagine that they had 85 million plus users, specifically in business? People love that. And then a few years later, they had a market share of 0.1%, and eventually they had to shut down. And it's interesting to look at this case. They had everything that needed to lead the market. They had already the users. So if you have the users, you have the distribution. But they refused to have a different design. They refused to have something more adaptable. And they left that competition. They couldn't change. They said, that's how it is. Let's keep like that. The antidote for this is to be flexible, to adapt toward according to what you learn. Look, what about Nintendo? They start as cards and then to console, to the Switch. They continuously adapt. Imagine if Nintendo today would try being a card company as they were more than 100 years ago. Because Nintendo was founded in 1889. And eventually they got to almost 1 billion consoles sold. But they moved. 1889, they were founded. Cards company. But they adapted because they are flexible. They look what they could do. Imagine if they would just say, no, we have been doing cards and that's what worked. People are going to play cards all the time. No. They focus on entertainment. And number 5 is the danger. You get excited about something and then you put all of your chips there. So you go all in. Maybe you heard about this? The Fire Phone. Amazon wanted to do something crazy there, 3D display and highly connected with Amazon and everything. So it had a short life. It was about a year, and the loss was massive. The loss is not so publicly reviewed, but if you look at the annual report, you can do some calculations, but it's estimated to be very high. So around 300 million max, but minimum is 200 million. And what happened, it was an all-in bet. So instead of understanding what makes sense and so on, let's launch this thing here and put in the market. And we are Amazon, that's gonna work. So if you wanna make it work, do rapid experiments. That would be a better strategy. Dropbox, for example. Dropbox didn't launch everything, for example, build the whole product and then you present to the user. No, they created a video and then a sign up. They created a video promising what would it be. And then they saw people got interested in that. And they focused specifically on highly technical people. And then they started growing, but it was rapid experimentation. So that's what was the focus. 2007, they launched, and today they have more than 700 million users and a huge revenue of a few billion. So to look at this scenario, what you don't want to do, it's going to break your strategy. You don't want to be a better shadow because, if you copy everything, it's not going to work. And if everything matters equally, nothing matters. So you need to have something that helps you stand out. And changing priority every second week is not going to help you. You still need to have something you get in a solid way out. But also not changing at all, that's a bad strategy. You need to adapt towards the market. And when you put all chips in one place, it's dangerous. So here's how you get out of that. Differentiation. Ensure you do something different than your competition. And differentiation is beautiful because you can think about, for example, a different business model. You can think about a different value proposition. So this kind of aspect here will help you with a better strategy. And then from there, we can have a conversation about, we will be able to have a conversation about product strategy. I will take the questions at the end, so it will be better. So you can keep that. I will answer for sure. But now looking at strategy, I gave here an overview of what doesn't work, what works. But now let's try solving this puzzle so we can go to prioritization techniques, which I will share with you my 2 favorite ones. When it comes to strategy, you need to see the big picture of product management, which for me is not complicated if we do well. There are 3 elements only. One of them, it is the strategy which simplifies decision making. And then we have discovery, which will help us understand what is worth pursuing. And within that, we have delivery, which is not only about shipping features, it is about shipping value. And all of these elements, they are intertwined. They are highly related to each other, and they will help improve each of them. So that's how the picture looks like. This is the big one of product management. For today, we will have a little bit more understanding of strategy. When it comes to strategy, if you Google that, or you ask any of the LLM how you can create a product strategy, I think you get more than 100 answers. And I'm not here to defend which one is better or which one is worse. I generally say if you have a few elements there, you're going to have success ahead of you and clarity. just go back to what matters. You want to simplify decision making. So you will benefit from knowing where you want to land. In a few years, where do you want to be? That's your vision. And you need something that will show you the elements of a strategy. How do you play the game? I like the Lean Canvas by Ash Maurya because it creates a story. It's something from 2011 that is highly relevant today. In one canvas with 9 blocks, you can see the whole story. But for me, that's not enough yet because I want to understand a little bit better the competition. I'm a big fan of differentiation. So I like creating a value curve to look at the competitors and understand what they are offering and how we can create a curve that is different. And from there, we can come up with a roadmap. And what I see generally is that we start with the roadmap and we don't have the rest. And that is dangerous because the roadmap will be created based on opinions. And everyone will have a different agenda of where we want to go, or it's assumed we have shared understanding, which often we don't. So that's why I really recommend you to have the previous elements before you have a roadmap. And if you have a company that is running and so on, I tell you the following. You can set a vision and the Lean Canvas in a few hours. You set that, and then you can challenge, and then you can improve. Because if you have something to challenge, you can make it better and start using it. It's more about doing and then having the discussion. So that's what helps us move the discussion to a better place. Because this kind of framework I'm showing to you will help you have better communication and better decision making. And how do you know if your strategy is working? With a few things. Look at ownership. When you look at teams, what are they held accountable for? If velocity and shipping features is all that matters, that's dangerous because then teams will do their best to ship stuff. But how do they know that things are the right to do? So teams should be accountable for results. That would be a better way than the strategy should be that. And the other aspect is, where does the prioritization take place? If it is outside the team, even outcomes, the team won't have end-to-end responsibility because someone is telling them what they should do. It should be inside. Can be collaboratively, but the team should own what they are doing. And what about decision making? If you realize that teams need to discuss everything in a very detailed way, it will be very much this analysis paralysis. And there's a mindset. I say that a bad decision is often better than no decision because a bad decision creates learning and no decision creates nothing. It will create just more discussion. So you want to focus on progress. And what about goals? Is it clear where you're going short term? And how do you know if that's clear? You see the teams are using to prioritize. You see the teams are using to filter ideas out, and they talk about it when they do product demos, when they do reviews. They say, this is what we have been working towards and how it contributes to that. And the last aspect of strategy has some relation with topology, which is also how the teams collaborate with each other. If teams have a lot of coordination, it will be very hard to get work done because you need to talk a lot about the work before you can do the work. But when they have a lot of collaboration, it makes it easier. Once you have this, and so on, it is time to start filtering out ideas because you're going to have more ideas than you can possibly do, even with AI. That's what happens. So you do want to filter things out that are unrelated to strategy. That's the first thing you need to do. You look at your ideas and you say, how does this help us get closer to what we aim to be, like our vision? How does this help us go here with our strategy? If it doesn't, you filter out. From there, then we can talk about some prioritization. And I want you to look at this quote from Martin Dauman, the author of Driving Value with Sprint Goals. It's very simple. Use what you know to discover what you don't. Within that, you can make decisions gradually and step into the unknown. And I promise you that I would share my favorite techniques, and they are very simple. But that requires us to have strategy. First part of my technique is the same. It's about the filter. Whatever comes my way, I ask, how does this contribute to our vision? How does this relate to our strategy? How does this help us get closer to the goal? Everything that doesn't, I get it out. But then there will be still a lot of things that possibly relate to that, and we cannot do everything. How do we decide? You will come up with ideas as well because you are a product person, and you need to do the same with your ideas. So the very first thing is about understanding. I like considering a few key aspects. What is the potential return for the business on that? If you are to invest in this, what do we get in exchange? And how much do customers care about it? Because it's not everything that we face that customers really care about it. What is the relevance for them? And how many customers would benefit from this if we are to work on that? And how does that help us differentiate from our competitors? And what about our ability of solving this problem? Because it might be that is a problem that we actually have no idea how to solve it, and we don't want to invest that much of energy. So we need to understand that. Can we get this sorted out? Generally, this is the aspect that I like looking of any idea, because that will give me a perception if we should pursue that or not. And for me, it's more about like comparing and contrast, because one of the dangers is in any idea that we have, there will be a confirmation bias and a commitment escalation. So why am I saying that? Because we generally go very quick. We select one idea and then we jump to implementation. So I don't like prioritization like this. I like small bets. So if we say something is nice, what about trying that out with different solutions? Because if we have different solutions, we will avoid the confirmation bias. We want to prove ourselves right. If we have different solutions for the same problem, we want to understand which one works best. And then it will also help us not fall prey to the commitment escalation. Commitment escalation is something very simple. The more invested you are into something, the more you are willing to invest. And that happens with our lives and everything else. A friend of mine once confided to me that his relationship was not doing well. He came to me and said, I think I should break up. And I said, tell me why. He said, it's not working. He said, like, we actually broke up on Monday, but Tuesday we made peace. Then we went back. On Wednesday, we broke up again, but we made peace again on Thursday. And now we are together. Today's Friday, but I think we should break up again and should be definite. I said, well, you should decide what is better for you. And then he looked at me and said the thing, but I have invested 2 years in this relationship. I don't want to lose these 2 years. And that is the moment I stayed quiet. I thought about telling him, like, you have already lost. You can't get that back. But I stayed quiet. And what happened was a commitment escalation. Last year, he got divorced. But that was already 7 years after the conversation. They had a kid, a house, and that was very painful for everybody. Now they don't even talk to each other anymore. Had they just broke up, it would be easier. But he didn't want to waste the 2 years. Now he says that he wasted almost 10. And that's what happened with features. We see that thing is not working, and we keep putting more energy into that. So think about it. Now, how do I like prioritizing? I am a very simple person, and I like doing this prioritization metrics. After I filtered out, I talked about the ideas, and I say, what is the effort? What is the potential result? And some things will be just a waste of time. Others will be, wow, maybe that's a nice to have. It's easy to implement, but the value is very low. And there are things that are bets. Maybe if we do that right, it can be quite successful, but it will take a long time. And the others are what I call value drivers. Low-hanging fruits also, low effort and so on. I like categorizing, putting things here in this box. What I call waste here is a bit strong name. I know that sometimes the waste is necessary because it might be something like a legal issue that you have to invest. It's low value for users and so on, but you have no choice, you have to do that. But I like calling it waste because we'll be very mindful about that particular box. And here's about discussing. What I say is for value drivers and nice to have, go ahead. Be careful with the nice to have, not to distract you, because too many nice to have will just get you with a lot of low value features. The value lies on value drivers and bets. But for bets, you need to do gradually. You don't want to go all in, do it gradually. So this is one of the methods I like using because it helps us have a better discussion. Another method I like is a very simple Venn diagram. I look at this, customers' desirability. Do customers want that? Can we collect value for business? Can we do that in terms of feasibility? And then I start positioning ideas where I think they fit. For example, which evidence do we have customers want or the others and so on? I would just categorize them, recognizing that things that customers would want and we could do, but we have no idea how to collect value, that would just drain our energy. So it's a waste. If we're doing that, it's an investment that we know we have no idea how to get the return out of that. And here is the most dangerous one. There is potential for business and we can do it, but we have no idea how customers would benefit that. So this is what I call the ideas inside the office that we lack evidence, and then we put our energy there. For these ones, I would say run experiments to prove if customers want or not. Most probably they don't want, so you can drop the idea. This one is also dangerous because this is the thing that never gets done. Customers could benefit, but you lack the expertise to get that out. And business could also benefit from that. So be careful with some overlaps that are not with the 3 bubbles, because they will distract you. And these are dangerous. The exercise I like doing is positioning. Say like, how do we know customers want? Okay, then here. How do we know we can do it? So we start positioning and we want to get the ideas that are on the sweet spot. And these ideas will help us move forward. So these 2 frameworks, they are very simple, but they lead to, again, better communication, better decision making. And that's how I like simplifying prioritization. But you can only get to this if you manage to filter out the distractions, because there's a big chance you have, I don't know, hundreds of ideas and only a few dozen relate to what matters now. And those are the ones you should be talking about. So that's what I had to share with you. And I want to leave you one thought. Like whatever you choose to do, how fast you learn is what matters. That's what you need to put your energy into. And generally I say, the more time something would need to get out, the more you need to invest into discovery. So I'm asking now, how can you simplify what others complicate? That's the question I would like you to reframe. So now we have the time for questions.
Thank you so much, David Pereira. It was great, awesome presentation actually. Not a cool one, because I think really awesome because it covers so much ground here today with us. So I would suggest people do exactly what João Gomes is doing, which is just raising your virtual arm. And I will try to moderate the best as I can, and I call people to do their questions here in with their own voice. So, João, you are the first one. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, and good afternoon to everybody. I was wondering, I've come across many situations where flexibility and rapid change are used very often. So how can we determine that we are not being flexible, but we are changing way too much? So it's really difficult to measure when we are just making changes for making changes, or if we are just being flexible and trying to adapt the product in a better way. Is there a recipe for that?
Yeah, recipes are a bit hard in the product sphere. The answer generally is a boring depends. But in most of the case, flexibility for me, it is when you understand something maybe has worked for you in the past, but it's not working at the moment. Being flexible means willing to try something else. I will give you an example, personal one. I started blogging on Medium, and that was my channel all the time, and had been working a lot. I had articles there that got hundreds of thousands of impressions, and at some point, even after growing my followers, no matter what I did, it stopped working. It stopped working. And about being flexible in this case, what was it? I migrated to another platform to try it out. I migrated to Substack. I kept Medium in parallel for a bit and I was comparing. And then I saw more traction on Substack. That is about being flexible. And now when it comes to change, for example, being reckless. Now let's go back to this example. I have always, my topics about writing, they are product management, agile, and leadership. Excessive change would be, I start talking about different things there. I start talking, for example, about cooking and say, okay, let's try about cooking now and see how it resonates. So cooking, oh no, let's talk about travel. Let's talk about wine. Let's talk about other things that I like, music and so on. That would be something a bit too reckless because I'm experimenting things that are very unrelated and so on. So that would be an excessive change. And flexibility is when you are willing to adapt to, because you learn that something is not giving the results you want. And generally, I see signs on that. You can see signs, for example. There's a principle I like very much, which is stop starting and start finishing. And when it comes to the situation of too many chains, you will see too many things in parallel that they don't move. They just start. So that's a sign.
Yeah. And also something that I've seen is also, and there's a huge number of features just being created time and time again, trying to cover every single possibility.
Yes, that's another example. Good one.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Any other questions? Please raise your virtual arm and we'll do our best. Sorry. Susanna.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the excellent presentation. So my question is, when you have a cross-functional team and some of the team members identify the need to pivot the solution, but the other parts of the team are stuck on the unchangeable mindset, what are the strategies that we could use just to provide feedback or clarity to the rest of the team to see if, in fact, you need to pivot or not?
You need to move from opinions to evidence. So, for example, if you have an idea, you realize with the team, and you have just an idea, and then you know the teams are red resistant. So they will have opinions about the idea, but it's still very abstract. I would say, what is something you could do so you get the level of evidence, and then you talk about the evidence you collected. For example, product survey with clients. You run something, you say, hey, we got results here from 100 clients, and about this, that's what we learned, and it hints to us that we should go in this direction. And then you say, what do you think about it? Because once you bring some evidence, it's a different conversation. It's not an opinion anymore. Even if it's weak evidence, you would still get a commitment. Okay, let's try, for example, a high-level solution right now to see how it goes. So move from opinions to evidence. That's my recommendation, to bring the skepticals together.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So just to tag along this question, when you say move from opinion to evidence, sometimes people really struggle finding what kind of evidence works for them. Do you have any recommendations around that?
I generally like giving stories. So share a story of a wine e-commerce I worked. Someone came with an idea that we should create a blog. It was called Wine Made Simple, because people in Brazil actually don't drink wine that much. It's different than Portugal. So Brazilians are more like beer people, and said like, we need to educate people. So maybe if they start reading blogs and they get why this is interesting and so on. They get excited, they start buying more. And then some people in the room start challenging, saying opinions, saying like, nah, nobody's going to read that. Brazilians don't like reading much, and so on and so on. And others say, no, this is cool. We can make it visually beautiful and so on and so on. And then the conversation already took 15 minutes. And then there was one developer in the room, and he said, what if we just put this link in our navigation and we see what happens? Will people click there? And he said, the time we're talking, I can put already there, and we leave this for 2 hours and we see how many people will click there. We look at the traffic and how many people saw that and how many clicked. And then people were, oh, okay, let's try. Put it live, 2 hours. And the amount of people who saw that was about 5,000 people. And we had some clicking. Of course, they got a 404 because we didn't have anything behind it. But so there is some interest, that's some evidence. Maybe we create one blog and we see what happens. So that's what I say about moving towards evidence. But the very first evidence is just to give you a direction. And the direction is, should we pursue that or not? You still don't want to commit fully, but that's an example. How do you get something that hints it makes sense or it doesn't make sense?
Thanks. I think it's quite clear. All right. So we still have 1 or 2 minutes. If you have any final question, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, we will wrap up the session. All right. So thank you so much, David. It was a really instructive session. Let me just thank you also on behalf of Productized that we are super excited to have you here in Lisbon this year. Actually, for the first time as a speaker, so looking forward to your talk. Also, don't forget that this is the first webinar class with David Pereira. Next week, we have an upcoming webinar on measuring product success with Productized, and this is going to be Wednesday the 28th. And you can still register for it. I just left the link on the chat if you're interested in joining. Still have a few spots open. It's always going to be a very small class like this one. And of course, if you haven't had the chance and the pleasure to join us, you will be able to retrieve this on video format on our YouTube channel. David, thank you so much. And everyone else, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great one.
Thank you.